be chairing the Planning Committee today. To my left, we have Councillor Vincent, Vice Chairman, Officer Jess, Officer Helen Mellors, Officer Helen Bowman, and Officer Chris Rain. So the Vice Chairman will now read out the safety notice.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are not expecting a fire drill today, so if the fire alarm sounds, we need to evacuate the building. There are 2 fire exits from this room. One is through the double doors where you came in, and the other is to the door to the right of the stage, which leads to an external fire escape. Please note that you should not use the lift in the event of a fire, and in the event of evacuation, we meet to the left of the main entrance to Thorpe Lodge. Thank you.
This meeting is being live streamed. Members of the public are welcome to film proceedings as long as they are not disruptive to the conduct of the meeting. If anyone wishes to film or record the meeting, please identify yourselves now. Please can you all ensure that mobile phones, electronic devices are turned to silent. Councillors, please do not use your mobile phone while the committee is in session. We will have comfort breaks at various times throughout the meeting. If you must use your mobile, then please leave the room. However, you will appreciate that this could result in you not being able to vote on the matter under discussion at the time you leave the room. The order of business is as set out on the agenda. Members of the public can only speak if prior arrangements have been made in accordance with the Council's scheme of public speaking. The time allocated is a maximum of 5 minutes per speaker. Parish Council, Parish Council with a maximum of 15 minutes per category. Only people who have registered to speak will be able to address the committee. The order will be as follows. The planning officer will present the application. Public speakers will then be asked to present their case, followed by questions from members of the committee to clarify something the speaker has said and not to invite the speaker to put further points across. The order of public speaking is Parish Town Council first, followed by objectors and finally supporters. Council members who are not members of this committee will then be invited to speak for the allocated time of a maximum of 5 minutes for each speaker. This will be followed by questions from members of the committee. Again, these questions will only be to clarify something the speaker has said and not to invite the speaker to put further points across. The committee will then discuss and determine the application. Finally, there is no provision for members of the public to circulate documents, photographs, etc. at the meeting. Are there any questions before I open the meeting? No. Thank you. Well, the first item is declarations of interest, please, from anybody on the committee. No? Thank you. Apologies for absence, please.
Of course, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Fisher and Councillor Karimi Guvenlu.
Thank you. Minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of June for accuracy. Any comments on those? Are you happy that I sign those as a true record of that meeting? Thank you. Are there any matters arising from those minutes? No. Thank you. Then we go straight to the first application, which is...
Apologies for being late.
Okay.
I appreciate we've had 3 applications postponed this morning. And as I say in planning, for every person you please, you upset 2. And that's why I'm late this morning.
Okay, thank you. I'll just check with Officer Mellors. We are taking the 2 applications together for the park, aren't we?
Yes, we'll be presenting those as one presentation, but we need to make 2 decisions, one on each application.
Okay, so it's 2021-0161 and 2021-0178 for the Puck Yarmouth Road. And I'll hand over to Officer Bowman now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. We have received an additional letter in from the Town Council, Thorpe Town Council, which I'll just summarise before doing the presentation. They have reconsidered the proposal again in its entirety, and they now wish to object to the application. They're concerned regarding the increased ridge height would make the outbuilding more dominant and have a negative impact on the conservation area and the listed buildings. Materials are not sympathetic. The increase in ridge height would also make the building more dominant and over the listed building. The number of uses proposed on the site would lead to a proliferation of signage, which would have a negative impact. They consider that there's insufficient car parking, which would result on-street car parking on a main route into the city. So overall, they consider it's overdevelopment. They've also raised concerns that the cafe would be at the front of the site, away from where the original kitchen was, which may cause issues for putting in extraction systems. They've also raised concern about extraction systems in other units. So therefore they're objecting to the application. We've also received, since the update, the supplementary sheet, an additional letter from a member of public, again not raising any additional issues than what we've already had in the report. Jumped a bit too quickly there. I'm sure members were familiar with this site. It's literally just up the road from where we are today. It's in the River Green. So we have the Buck public house. You've got St Andrew's Church here, River Green frontage here, and obviously the river here as well. And there's a few commercial units along this property as well. So just going on here. So that's just an aerial view of it. Again, this is the location of the Buck public house. Members may also like to note, I've just highlighted where some of the other public houses are along this strip. So we've got the townhouse, the river garden, and the rush cutters as well. So again, just highlighting here where the listed buildings, etc. are. So St Andrew's Church and 63 and 63A are listed buildings. They're grade 2. The Buck itself is a grade 2 listed building. The ruins of the original church, they're grade 2 star. This brown hatched area at the bottom is actually the Broads area. And the whole area is within the conservation area as well. So just so we get familiar with the site, here's a photograph from the road frontage. This is the main public house building. Okay, this is the former toilet block, and this is the outbuilding, which you'll hear us referred to. You can see here actually there's residential properties behind here, which are accessed through the car park, and obviously you've got the church there as well. The river is behind me on this photograph. So the use in the proposal in itself is quite complex, so I'll go through that in some detail in just a second, because there's lots of different uses potentially being proposed. Just having a quick look at the layout. Obviously here we've got the main public house, an external seating area here. This is existing outbuilding, which is proposed to extend and upwards and towards the road. This is the pitched roof toilet block that we've got, and this is this kind of seating area. There's obviously the properties behind and the car park as well. You'll note that the layout of the car park provides an in and out. So just going through the proposed uses. Unit F here, which is the front of the public house, what is currently the front of the public house. That's Unit F, and that's proposed to be a cafe with the provision of being able to have hot food takeaway in there as well. So that's what's being proposed in the front part of that building. Unit D, which is the rear of this building, this was originally proposed as a residential unit. That's been deleted from the application for nutrient neutrality reasons. So in here, it's proposed to either have what is EA, which is a retail unit, or EG1, which is an office unit. So this is potentially either an office or a retail unit. Okay. Upstairs, and we will look at that later, the flat is retained. There is a correction in the report that the unit F did originally include a part of that upper floor. It doesn't anymore, and that's been deleted. So the flat remains as existing upstairs. Now, units A and B. Have a number of potential uses. So this is being done on a speculative basis. So they wish to market the property with a number of different potential uses. That's why we have so many here. So we've got Class EA, which is retail. Class EB, which is sale of hot food and drink, basically a cafe. Class EC, which is sort of financial and professional services. Class ED, which is inside sports, recreation, fitness. So probably things like a gym would fit into that kind of category. Class EE, which is provision of medical and health services. Class EG, which is all kind of office or research and development, industrial processes, which can be operated next to residential properties without causing any issues. So that would what we would have called the old Class B1. There are also a number of sui generis uses proposed: hot food takeaway, nail salon, beauticians, massage therapist, hair salon, and simulation shops such as a golf simulator. You will also sort of note on the report that a condition is proposed that you wouldn't have a hot food takeaway in both units A and B at the same time. Unit C, it is proposed that this would have a public house use, so that as part of this work it would be extended and have a public house use. So in terms of the alterations, there's no alterations proposed as part of the external alterations proposed as part of the main listed building. There's some minor internal alterations to a staircase and the provision of a toilet here, and the blocking up of an access passage in there as well, which I'll talk in a bit about more detail. In terms of the alterations to the outbuilding, is proposed to increase this in height and bring it forward, and it to have a sort of a brick plinth with timber cladding, but we'll come into that in a bit more detail. So just in terms of where we stand in terms of a policy and the principle of this development, in terms of the national guidance, paragraph 93C in the NPPF requires us to guard against unnecessary loss of valued facilities and services, particularly where this would reduce the community's ability to meet its day-to-day needs. Our own policy in our development management policy document, the relevant one is policy CSU2, and that that I'll just quickly read the wording of that. So that's proposals involving the loss of community facilities or local services should be avoided. However, in exceptional circumstances, the proposal for the change of use of community facilities or local services will be considered where it's been demonstrated that the use is no longer viable and cannot be made viable, or plans for its replacement are included within the proposal. The BUT closed in May 2019, and it hasn't been opened since. It went through a number of landlords in the previous years before that. As I pointed out previously, there are a number of public houses in the area, the Townhouse, Rush Cutters and River Garden. These all sort of have larger floor areas, sort of better facilities, and do have sort of beer gardens that go down to the river, which do make them probably a more sort of viable option than the Buck, which does have limited floor space. The toilets, or some of the toilets currently are in this unit A here, so you have to go outside to go to the toilet. Now, we have had an objection from camera, so that is noted. But as part of our considerations, we've also looked at the public house element is being proposed to be retained as a sort of a micro pub in Unit C, which would have less overheads than the larger public house. We've also got the cafe, which will help to create a community hub in a very attractive area. We've got a range of kind of commercial units, which will help create that community facility and businesses. So the policy, the proposal does not strictly accord with the policy CSU2, but there obviously would be a public house retained on the site. There'd be increased activity, including community facilities, and it would also make the site more viable, which then would help to support the long-term maintenance of the heritage asset. So in principle, we do consider that the development is acceptable in this instance. I'll just go down in more detail here. In terms of the impact on the design and the impact on the heritage assets, as I stated at the beginning, the Buck is a listed building. We've got a number of other listed buildings within the vicinity. We've also got the Broads area and the conservation area. So there's a number of heritage assets. In terms of the alterations to the main listed building, the spiral staircase, which was proposed in the main building, has been deleted. So we've got small alteration here of providing a toilet and alterations to the staircase here, and closing up the access along here. The heritage officer has visited the site and assessed it and feels these alterations are acceptable and largely could be reversed. So it doesn't feel that they have any significant impact on the significance of the building. Now, in terms of the outbuilding, it is proposed to increase the height of this by about 454 mil, so just under 2 feet, and bring it forward as well, because there's a canopy at the front that you'll see on the photographs, and it's bringing that forward. You'll obviously note here that it is lower than the existing toilet block with the roof, which will be a point of reference. It is currently a sort of a poor quality building with poor materials at the moment. We obviously acknowledge that it is set back, so it does have a sort of a recessive impact at the moment. What is in terms of what is being proposed, obviously we've got that increased height, but we've also got this timber cladding with this higher brick plinth here. The proposal has been amended after we did have objections from English Heritage, so we've got smaller windows and this higher brick plinth. English Heritage have now removed their objection. They have stated that still obviously prefer brick or render. That has been discussed with the applicant, but they're not prepared to negotiate on that matter. So I think what we have here is an upgrading of a very sort of insubstantial, poor quality structure. We've struck a balance here in terms of providing a larger brick plinth. The Heritage Officer's comments in terms of the timber cladding, which will sort of grey as it weathers. He doesn't feel that is unacceptable or unusual for an outbuilding, so he doesn't raise an objection on that. The existing building, is low quality, and we're seeking to enhance that to preserve the setting of the listed building and conservation area. In terms of the requirements of paragraph 202 of the MPPF, there is a balance to be made in terms of public benefit and supporting the viability of the scheme and the use of the listed building. And in this instance, we do feel that outweighs any less than substantial harm caused by the proposed alterations to the building. In terms of residential amenity, there's just a couple more photos just shown in context there, and you'll note the buildings behind. There's a 3D one, and there's the outbuilding there that you can see. Just coming on to, in terms of residential amenity, concerns has been raised that the increase in height would be overly dominant and it would obscure views from these properties behind and cause some overshadowing. So you can see the corner of them there as we go round. There's the side of the existing building here. They're the existing properties. Okay. So obviously there will be an increase in height. So there's just looking at the sides. That's what they kind of see at the moment. So you can see the ridge of the building there. So it will be lower than that as a comparison when you're looking at this. So it will increase it here. Obviously they are looking out onto this wall in any event. We don't consider that that increase in height would be so overbearing that it would warrant refusal of the application. Any additional overshadowing to the driveway wouldn't be significant. There is, in planning terms, there is no right to a view, but we don't feel that this proposal would sort of entirely obscure views from these properties. In terms of other issues, in terms of residential amenity, we are proposing an opening hours condition, 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. Currently, there's no restrictions on the site at the moment. It could operate 24/7. As I noticed before, noted before, we are looking at these two units both not being hot food takeaways at the same time. In terms of the extraction, this is an incredibly constrained site, and we have had discussions about how they could achieve the extraction without having a negative impact on the listed build, on the heritage assets or the residential amenity. To be honest, it's going to be quite difficult. They're probably going to have to look at some kind of internal system to be able to do that. It's not impossible. It does bring into kind of question whether it would be a viable option for these units, but we've had a lot of discussion. We can't refuse it on the fact that something would potentially be too expensive. It just means that particular use wouldn't necessarily come forward. So it's possible to do it, but we have highlighted that it wouldn't be an easy process. And the same would apply for the cafe at the front of the buck as well. I think where that's slightly different is in terms of a cafe, you can operate that without an extraction system. It depends obviously what you're cooking, but you could operate that use without requiring the extraction system. So we're not too concerned about having that cafe use at the front. In terms of highways, going back to this photograph here, we've got the car park. It is an extremely sustainable location. It's in walking distance and cycling distance of a large population. It's also on a bus route. So the number of car parking spaces proposed is 15. That is below what the parking standards, the Norfolk County Council parking standards for Pacific users. But given this sustainable location, we really couldn't justify refuse on not having enough car parking. We've also got cycle provision on the proposed as well. The layout has been amended so that you will have an in and an out. So we won't have issues with vehicles trying to turn, which would have been the case with the original proposal. The car parking itself would be self-managed between those users rather than allocated spaces. You'll also note from the report that the church has in the past had a sort of a relationship where people have going to the church have parked in the car park. The applicant has indicated that he's willing to allow this, subject to there obviously being space in the future. But that is purely a private arrangement and not something we can secure through the planning system. So in conclusion, the proposed mix of uses would provide community facilities which would help enhance the vitality and the viability of the area and ensure the long-term use of the listed building. The design is considered acceptable, and any less than substantial harm is outweighed by getting the building back into use and the increased commercial activity in the area. The impacts on amenity and highway safety are considered acceptable and can be controlled by condition. So therefore, we'd like to recommend both applications for approval.
Thank you very much. Councillors, do you have any questions for Officer Bowman, please? No? Thank you. We'll go straight to public speaking then. And it's Parish Town Council first. I'll call Councillor John Fisher, please. And you have 5 minutes, Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to explain, I'm covering for the person who was going to turn up when it was estimated this would be discussed at 11:30, 12ish. So basically, Thorpe St Andrew Town Council originally had concerns and objections to the additional building, but did not raise objections to the general principle of development of the site proposed, because they felt it was important to try to get the site back into use and to have more support from businesses to support the actual costs of a listed building. And the viability of the listed building, we decided was sufficient reason to support what was proposed before. What we are now concerned about is the increased height of the additional building, and also the additional business. Instead of 2 residential units, they've now got an additional business unit operating from there, and we believe this will impact on both the listed building surrounding it, the listed building of the public house, and the listed building of the church. I mean, effectively, the site is critically important to the town area. It frequently appears in photographs, ancient photographs, old photographs. It features on Christmas cards, and that's the importance of this particular site within the community. As I say, the building's listed and it's totally surrounded by listed buildings. The proposal to extend the gents' toilet effectively, which is a pitched roof building, and extending that with a flat roof, contemporary design, cladded building, we now object to. When we considered it the second time, it was a split vote before. It was then unanimous that we know, with the additional 2 foot in height and the changes to the facade, we now raise objections to that particular extension to what is the gents toilet, and that will create three small business units in what was effectively the bear garden. And looking at the 3D drawing, which is in front of you, excellent. I think, or we think, that in fact that flat roof building added to that pitched roof is just a carbuncle on the side of the gents' toilet, and not wishing to influence the design, but I think if they could get rid of the gents' toilet altogether, that might be a better idea rather than try to do something with it. However, the town council's main concerns are the parking that's going to be generated by all the businesses, and the overflow of vehicles will in fact impact on the traffic flow because there is nowhere to park other than on the main Yarmouth Road. And if you park on the Yarmouth Road, unless you park on the path, you then obstruct any through traffic which is larger than a car. You can get 2 cars past, but the bus or lorries, it brings the whole road to a standstill, as does the church when they have funerals. However, and so it is an issue locally. It's covered in your report, I think, on pages 515 of paragraphs 528 and 529, where the Acts of the Highway state parking provision does fall short of suggested levels. But I think, as the officer said, they believe the site to be sustainable and therefore customers will walk. It is not surrounded by chimney pots. To the south, it is totally river. So you've not got it's a little site here which is surrounded by chimney pots and people that can walk. In fact, when the pub was busy, it used to bring Yarmouth Road to a halt because people parked on the road. Luckily, because the pub failed, it was not busy for the last few years. Has not been an issue. So, as stated, this is a critical site within the conservation area. Again, that's covered in your report, and Section 72 of the Listed Buildings Act 1990 actually states that special attention shall be paid to the desirability of preserving and enhancing the character and appearance of the area. Planning, I know, is subject to opinions, but Town Council feel that this proposal will not enhance the appearance or preservance of the building, of the area, anything to do with the conservation area. We believe it will in fact detract from anything, and that's mainly due to the increased parking and the potential. A business has to advertise, so there will be advertising, there will be A boards, and I just feel that if it goes ahead, that the enforcement in this council will be kept very busy trying to enforce what is allowed. So in conclusion, I say TSA Council requests the committee to refuse this application on the grounds of the impact on the listed buildings, impact on the surrounding area, impact on the parish church, and insufficient parking, and on a main artery road turned from the city. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. Do any councillors have a question for Councillor Fisher, please? No, thank you. If you'd like to resume your seat, please, and if Nicole Wright would like to come forward. Thank you, Nicole. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this morning. I'm Nicole Wright, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the applicant. I have a lot of respect for Councillor Fisher, but of course my views are different to his on this occasion. You would have heard that the pub has been shut for some time. Councillor Fisher mentioned that, of course, because the pub has been shut, the impact on the highway has been better. We do appreciate that, but the pub is actually a very special building for all of us, and for visitors to the area, for the whole of the district. it is a special site, and it is important that it is brought back into use. So given the importance of the site, I think it's important that we try and take a decision that would be able to bring it back into a viable new use. Planning law requires that applications for planning permission be determined in accordance with the development plan, unless there are material considerations which indicate otherwise. Currently, the entire site is in one use class, that of a public house, with a flat on the first floor of the principal building. The proposal seeks to keep the site in commercial use, but to introduce flexibility for the permitted uses on the site to ensure its future viability and sustainability. The application proposes the refurbishment and change of use of the Buck and its outbuildings to create a mix of business uses. The scheme proposes to retain one of the smaller units as a pub and a wine bar. The first floor would remain as a flat, and the ground floor converted to a cafe, which would be very family friendly. 2 additional small units provided in the outbuildings would be made available for small local businesses, which would provide appropriate uses to a residential setting, such as beauticians, massage therapists, hair salon, etc. And of course, this will ensure that the site is viable, having opportunities for growing businesses. The proposal complies with the development plan and the National Planning Policy Framework, and there are 3 policies cited in 3 key paragraphs of the NPPF that I would like to raise and bring to your attention this morning. I'm sure you're familiar with them, but I just like to refer to them. That's paragraph 38, the first one. Local planning authorities should approach decisions on proposed development in a positive and creative way. Work proactively with applicants to secure developments that will improve the economic and social and environmental conditions of the area. 81, that's paragraph 81, planning policies and decisions should help create the conditions in which businesses can invest and expand and adapt. Significant weight should be placed on the need to support economic growth and productivity, taking into account both local business needs and wider opportunities for development. Paragraph 93, again, it's divided into 4 parts. With respect to Part A, the proposal will enhance the sustainability of the local community by providing a mix of local facilities, which will be accessible by walking and cycling. With regards to Part B, it will deliver facilities and amenities for use by older people and the young within close proximity to their homes and provide opportunities for social interaction and healthier lifestyles. And with regards to C and D, help the site to develop and modernize and safeguard the provision of community services and facilities, bringing new life to the site and increasing the lifespan of the existing listed building. Thank you. So there's been an iterative design process which has been undertaken, and the scheme has been discussed at length with your officers, both in the design and conservation team and development management team. You will be aware, of course, that the site and this application has been in discussion with the council for some time. This application, in fact, was submitted in January 2021. So there has been a year and 5 months spent on negotiating the right solution for the site. So the current proposal will provide these additional opportunities for small businesses. The proposal represents sustainable development in line with the development plan and the National Planning Policy Framework. And I would invite you to approve it without delay. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Do any councillors have questions for Nicole, please? Yes, Councillor Riley.
Hi, Nicole. When you just said it took a year, it's taken a year and 5 months to negotiate and change amendments, whatever. Why is that taking a year and 5 months?
Well, during that time, we've been having discussions with design and conservation. There have been consultation responses that have come in from others. that we've needed to address. And we've gone out to speak to the town council and local people to take comments on board. So it's taken a while.
Thank you. Any further questions, please? Yes, Councillor Vincent.
Thank you for your presentation. My question, I've got two actually. One is around the marketing of the premises as a public house. We've been told in our report there's been limited marketing of it, and it was largely done during the pandemic. I don't know if you could give us any further details, please.
Okay. My knowledge and understanding is the site, the pub has been struggling for a long time. So all of the likely parties would have been interested in purchasing it would have been inquiring during its struggling years. There was a period of active marketing, which is reported in the report, which I believe was done by Roche, which complies with the requirement for marketing under the policies of the local plan. And in addition, when my client purchased the site, they also marketed it openly for any offers for different uses for the site. Thank you.
Thank you. And my second question, if I may, that was to do with the extraction system for the takeaways or the food retail. Are you able to give any details? Because again, in paragraph 5 point, I think it's 27, our report raises some concern about that.
Yes. So at the moment, the eateries, the cafe and other facility could operate without any extractor fans being put in place. If they did need to have them, they would have to. There are design solutions that are out there that could be achieved with minimal impact on the context. But any solution would have to come back to you for consideration. So it couldn't take place in the permitted development that you could just put in a solution that anyone would be upset about. It would have to come back for consideration, which is required by the conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, any further questions? No, if you'd like to resume your seat, Nicole, please. Thank you. And now time for a statement from local member Sue Lawn, and Officer Jess is going to read this out.
Thank you, Chair. So, dear members of the committee, first I must apologise for not making this meeting in person and say thank you to the chairman and officers for agreeing to read my statement of concerns out on my behalf. I have many concerns in relation to this application, with my most serious concern as to the traffic congestion and parking issues this overdevelopment will have on Yarmouth Road. This site is in the heart of a conservation area, and to grant permission for the additional small business units, as proposed, will be a disaster for all concerned. There will be 5 businesses on a site which was at full capacity when there was just the one very lucrative and viable public house. To increase the business units here will be setting these small businesses up to fail before they even get started. The parking spaces allocation is simply inadequate for what is being proposed. You'll be aware that Highways originally stated their concerns that users of the proposed car park find themselves in a situation where they will have to reverse out onto Yarmouth Road, which would not be appropriate and would pose a danger to motorists and to pedestrians. If the allocated 14 spaces should have customers or business owners parked up, there would be no space for delivery drivers to turn. This would lead to a possible encroachment on the residential properties to the rear of the site, especially where the refuse and recycling bins are situated. I do appreciate that Highways have reviewed their statement and no longer have any objections. I have to say that I very much bring into question their judgment and injudiciousness in this case. The visibility splay and sight lines on both exits from this car park is highly dangerous, and the possible congestion whilst cars and lorries enter and exit the site will cause chaos on one of the busiest routes into the city. The proposed parking and landscape plan does not account for customers parking other than in the cafe, to which they have allocated 6 spaces, leaving 6 spaces for the residents in the proposed flat and 3 other businesses. This application is in the heart of a conservation area. The site has an extremely pretty, quaint, Grade 2 listed public house, which has been allowed to deteriorate since this investment company acquired the site. The exterior finish on the proposed commercial units is not in keeping with surrounding buildings and indeed the beautiful setting of the Thorpe St Andrew Parish Church. I very much appreciate the applicant will advise the committee the business of a public house is no longer viable, but one of the proposed businesses to take up residence in the commercial unit will be a wine bar, what is the sense in building a unit for a wine bar when there is already a more than adequate building which will make a beautiful wine bar? I would refer you to the statement in your papers from camera asking for refusal of this application. I would question if the current owners ever had any intentions of marketing this as a viable business. This purchase was a mistake on their part. As an investment company, they are trying to get a return on their investment, but I would ask that you do not let Thorpe St Andrew lose a very beautiful traditional public house with a more than adequate outside space to become an eyesore of commercial units which are not in keeping with the conservation area. I would ask that you please consider refusal of this application on the following: overdevelopment of this site, the impact on a Grade 2 listed building in a conservation area, insufficient parking on site with the potential to push on-street parking which is already at capacity in a conservation area, insufficient visibility on entering and exiting the site. The construction materials chosen are not in keeping with the surrounding area, and new business units increased on signage and advertising in a conservation area. Once again, I thank you for your time and consideration. Councillor Susan Lawn.
Thank you. Right, now it's over to you, councillors. Shall I just start off? I was an occasional customer of the pub, and I saw the last 3 landlords there try their hardest to make that viable. One of them put in a lot of new menus and things, and he ended up just with the same half dozen drinking customers. So it was never viable. Parking is always a problem on Yarmouth Road. It can't make it any worse because there are no more spaces. The spaces are all taken up the whole time. The church next door had a funeral last week with 160 people. The church has no parking, and those people all somehow found somewhere to park. So people will find somewhere to park if they need to. So as far as objections go, both the people most affected, the church and the houses at the back, none of those have felt necessary to come here to raise their objections today. So I'm quite happy with this application. Councillor Riley.
Thank you. I've got a lot of sympathy actually for some of the comments that have been made from the council, town council, and Councillor Fisher's
today or presentation, but I do have something because I can see 2 sides of the argument here in terms of the setting and
the nature of it and where it is. And where it is, and I do have some sympathy for this. The problem I've got is, as I'm going through each point, and especially from what John said and what you've just read out there, you go through each one of them, and unfortunately, the policy seems to stack up for approval on each point. You go to highways have changed their position. You go to the back. And I also think that Councillor Ward's point just now, I've been in the buck lots of times in the past. I'm aware of how that business was struggling, the size of the building, etc. And there is an issue here in terms of that for sure. Roche, and I think Councillor Vincent's point about has this been adequately marketed? I've been around planning for years and also property development, particularly in London where I still operate. And there are occasions where you do get properties not properly marketed, particularly in retail, so that then you can get further planning permission down the road. But Roche here have, done their best, and I'm not seeing actually a deliberate attempt not to market, and I'm not seeing that in the planning report either. So again, I'm struggling on this one, and at the moment, unfortunately, with the way the planning policies are stacking up, I'm afraid I'd have to support approval, even though I do have sympathy for what's being said. I guess I am. sort of
Yes,
reluctant.
I've got Councillor Leggett, then Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah.
What was read out from Councillor Lawn really summed up my concerns, because I got very confused. I understood that we were told that there were a total of 15 parking places. And that is for the cafe, the pub, and all the other residents. But then I thought you said that there was some other parking for the other businesses. But is that part of the 15? Because as Councillor Ward has said, if you know that road, my word, and on your front of the pictures there was a car parked right on the path. And if they're not parked on the path, I'm sure there's chaos. But I am confused about how that 15 works out, Chairman.
Thank you. How it is, we've got these spaces laid out in the car parks. There's 14 plus the disabled spaces. So they're not specifically. There's no condition to specifically allocate these to certain uses. So they would be used between the flat and these commercial uses. So it wouldn't be allocated to a specific thing. The properties at the back have their own space in front of near their door. So it wouldn't be for those properties. They don't have a right to go in the car park, but it would be all these uses. So so there'd be no specific allocation over there. It would have to be self-managed with it between those particular uses. So obviously somebody in the flat might not have a car, for instance, so they might not use it, or they may do. And again, it will depend on those specific businesses. So it's very difficult to sort of allocate it to a specific use. And actually, it's about making the best use of those spaces for who needs them at various points in the day, which may vary. So that's how it's proposed to be used. That there's no specific allocation. It would just be those spaces.
Councillor Pratton and then Councillor Vincent.
I take your point about 160 people trying to get into Thorpe St Andrew Church to a funeral last week. But if you do want to go to a funeral or something like that, you're going to be staying in the church for an hour or more. But we've got some cafes or quick service people in and out. And I just do not think that anyone's going to park a 10-minute walk up a side road to go and get a quick takeaway or something like that. And I honestly perceive that car park is going to be overflowing in the undesirable way that you're already have already described. And I just, on terms of the car parking alone, I do not feel able to support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Chairman. I also sympathise with the comments raised by both Councillor Lawn and Councillor Fisher and the points that they're making about this building in the heart of a conservation area. With my member champion for heritage hat on, I am concerned about the proposals and the design in terms of materials and the prospect of a proliferation of signage, as we're being told. I've just got a question, if I may clarify something under paragraph 4.6 of our report. It was Historic England's objections, which were extremely detailed objections to the original plans, and referred to a number of paragraphs of the MPPF where they didn't feel the application met the requirements of those. My question really is, on the amended proposal, we have very limited comments from them. It doesn't say that they now remove their objection. It purely says seen the amendments and the windows are better. And I think it would still be better to be brick. But does that mean they've removed their objections? Could you clarify that for me, please?
I spoke to David Heave from English Heritage about the proposal, and he was obviously and the discussions about that. I think he obviously looked at the amended proposals. They tend to concentrate their comments on things that they they wish to object to, and when they withdraw those objections, they tend to not quite spend so much time on them. He was prepared for any decision to be delegated. He's removed his objection. He supported the improvements or the reduction in size of the windows. He obviously has made the comment that he'd prefer it to be brick or render, but he didn't want to pursue his objection on that basis.
Thank you. Councillor Adams.
Yeah, I'm with Steve that I'd like to be able to object to this, but as we all know, planning is policy driven, and I've been through the policies and I really can't see anything which might stack up. But yes, we do have certain policies, certainly policy GC4 design, 1 and 2 and 2.18 all sort of points to that you could possibly hang your hat on, but I wouldn't rely on these as the grounds if it went to a planning inspector. You also have got the MPPF, which again talks about sort of conservation sites, which says when considering the impact of a proposed development on the significance of a designated heritage asset, great weight should be given to the asset's conservation, and the more important the asset, the greater the weight should be. This is irrespective of whether any potential harm amounts to substantial harm, total loss, or less than substantial harm to its significance. Now, there again, I think if you are minded to refuse it, you could possibly use those grounds, but again, I have doubts whether a planning inspector would actually uphold those, because I don't think it is greatly affecting the heritage site. And as for parking, again, I don't think there is any policy that you could actually lay down that, about insignificant parking. So that's why, as much as I would like to find grounds, and I have been through every policy that I can look at, I cannot, like Steve, who has done the same, I suspect, find any grounds for which you can reasonably hang your hat. So as you know, if there are grounds for refusal, I will generally manage to sniff them out. But on this occasion, I'm afraid my sniffer has failed.
Thank you. Councillor Beadle.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to support this application. And the thing is, we're not talking about a blank sheet of paper here. We're talking about maintaining a historic environment in this vicinity. And we're actually also saying, and has been reported, that if the pub was successful, then there'll be so much parking on Yarmouth Road, it itself would be causing a hazard. So, you know, you're between a hammer and a hard place here. And I would have thought there's quite a likelihood that the different types of uses in the various units would actually tend to marry together and use the maximum, use the parking in the maximum way at different times of day. So I would support this, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Whilst obviously, because of the location of this site, many of us are up and down past it on a very regular basis, and I would very much like to see it revitalised and brought back to use, because at the moment it is a bit of a blight on the community. But what I'm struggling with is, if the pub in its existing form is not viable, why is the applicant saying that they're going to have a pub and wine bar in a different location? Why could they not have the pub where it already is and then use other parts of the same building for other uses? And that would maintain the character by putting a pub and wine bar in what appears to be just a cinder block building. To my mind, is going to actually detract from the village or town scene.
Thank you. Councillor Folger.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think this is a very finely balanced situation, and clearly the comments made by Councillor Lawn, I think, do have to be taken into account. And I think there would be great sympathy with the views which she's expressed. However, in the light of a situation where the various planning conditions and policies are concerned, I take the point that there isn't a significant element which would enable us to refuse this application. And whilst there are many relevant points, particularly with parking and also the nature of the conservation area, again, as has been said, I think on balance that with some reluctance that I am prepared to support this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from councillors? Yes, Councillor Leggett.
Yes, I share the points that have been made. I still am very concerned about the whole parking arrangements and the overall business, but unfortunately, I think Councillor Adams summed up there, it didn't seem to be I wouldn't be able to really justify it. This is what concerns me. So again, reluctantly, I think I'm going to support.
Thank you. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Chairman. I echo in the concerns made by Councillor Brennan and Councillor Adams, really. One observation is around 5.37 and a question I asked the agent earlier, and that was around extraction systems. Is it possible we would find ourselves, if this was approved, that the application would come back to say it's not possible to have internal flues and we would end up with an external flue system? Because 5.37 saying without the extraction system, it could make the change of use unviable. So would we find ourselves in a situation where we have a grade 2 listed building with external flues on? That would be a real concern for me.
The reason we put conditions on is to maintain control. And I think unusually we've made it really clear at this stage that actually there will have to be an internal provision for it likely to be acceptable in respect of the listed building, the setting of the listed building. Given the number of uses that have come forward, which don't require an extract system, I think, there is that element of anyone coming forward for those uses, but clearly we could still refuse an impact on the flue potential if that so arose because of the result of the setting of the listed building or the sheer scale of it. So I think we've made it really, if it was just for that use being proposed, I think we would be asking for that details up front. But because that use may not come forward, and we've clearly said that use to come forward needs to be an internal solution, that needs to be factored in if someone comes forward on that, and we're not limiting it just to those uses. So I'm satisfied that we still have control over that, and we won't be tied to the fact that just because we said that use could come forward, we've then got to go ahead with something that is unacceptable. We still maintain that control, Chair.
Thank you.
Sorry to come back on that. I'm a bit confused, to be honest, because in the report it says the matter has been discussed with the council's environmental services team and they agree it would be difficult to achieve an extract system due to the constraints of the site in terms of the heritage assets and residential amenity. Internal systems are a potential solution, but would be more expensive, take up internal space, and as a result may not be a viable option.
We haven't got the evidence to say that isn't a viable option. So based on that, I'm satisfied we can go to the condition.
Right. Any further comments from any councillors? No, then application 2021-0161 proposed by Councillor Riley, seconded by Councillor Adams. All those in favour, please. 1, 2, 3.
I read that as 6, Chair.
And those against?
And that's 3.
3, so that is carried. Thank you very much.
You should do the second recommendation.
Yes. And the second recommendation, 2021-0178, which was for changes to the minor internal changes to the listed building, which you heard about. So I'll propose that. We have a seconder, Councillor Adams. All those in favour, please. And against? 3. So that is also carried. Thank you very much. And that moves us on to the appeals.
Thank you, Chair. So we've had a number submitted, but we have also had one decision which was dismissed. I don't know whether Helen just wants to update on that one. Has Helen presented that one?
Yeah, you will remember this one because it came before us. Well, originally came before you for the solar farm at Corston, which was refused on 2 grounds. Use of best and most versatile land, and cumulative landscape impact. You'll also remember we had the subsequent application that we then approved, which had a smaller amount of agricultural land being used. The appeal decision basically came out and dismissed the appeal. I think the inspector's reasoning in terms of the agricultural land was actually we'd proved that you could do it with less agricultural land. So he supported us in that thing because we'd found a better solution for the site thing. The sort of food security was brought up as an issue as part of that. He disagreed, however, on the landscape impact. So it was only dismissed on the agricultural land value. But I think a lot of weight was put on the subsequent decision that we'd made in finding a better solution and resolving that problem.
It should also be noted that they put an award of costs against the council, and that was dismissed also. So we weren't awarded any costs, which was good news too.
Could I just say on that one? That's another one that we got right as the planning committee.
We usually do. And you put that but we did get that one right as well. And again, I proposed that. So, but we're on a winning team. We always are. Yeah. No, apart from you was actually on the wrong side.
Okay. Any final comments on appeals? No. Well, at 10:30, yes. Okay. Thank you.
Sort of, I believe there's been a marked improvement on appeals since a letter went to the head honcho at the planning inspector. And we're having a lot more of our refusals upheld than what we were previously. So even if we didn't get a reply out of it, I think the message got home.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Okay, meeting's closed at 10:38. Thank you very much, everybody.